Don't have to work today, so I decided why not go ahead and read some more of the book. So we're finishing The House of Night. We're doing, we're starting at chapter 4. I did chapters 1 through 3 already. All right, chapter 4. So I sat on my bed and coughed while I listened to my mom making a frantic call to our shrink's emergency line, followed by followed quickly by another equally hysterical call that would activate the dreaded People of Faith prayer tree. Within 30 minutes, our house would be filled up with middle-aged, judgy women and their controlling husbands. They called me out to the family room. My mark would be considered a really big and embarrassing problem, so they'd probably anoint me with some crap that was sure to clog my pores and give me a cyclops-sized zit before laying their hands on me and praying. They'd ask God to help me stop being such an awful teenager and a problem to my parents. Oh, and the little matter of my mark needed to be cleared up too. If only it were that simple. I'd gladly make a deal with God and be a good kid versus changing schools and species. I'd even take the geometry test. Well, okay, maybe not the geometry test, but still, it's not like I'd asked to become a freak. This whole thing meant that I was going to have to leave to start my life over somewhere that I'd be the new kid, somewhere I didn't have any friends. I blinked hard, forcing myself not to cry. School was the only place I really felt at home anymore. My friends were my family, my only family. I balled up my fists, squidged my face up, keeping from crying. One step at a time, I just take this one step at a time. No way was I going to deal with clones of the step loser on top of everything else. And as the people of faith, if they weren't bad enough, the horrid prayer session would follow by an equally annoying session with Dr. Asher. He talked to me like I'm 6 instead of 17 and asked me a lot of patronizing questions about how this and that made me feel. Then he'd babble on and on about teenage anger and angst being normal, but that only I could choose how it would impact on my life. Blah, blah. And since this was an emergency, he probably wanted me to draw something that represented my inner child or whatever. I definitely had to get out of there. Good thing I've always been the bad kid and was well prepared for situations like this. Okay, I wasn't exactly thinking about escaping from my house so I could run off and join the vampires when I put a spare key to my car under the flower pot outside my window. I was just considering that I might want to sneak out and go to Kayla's house. Or if I really wanted to be bad, I might meet Heath at the park and make out. But then Heath started drinking and I started to change into a vampire. Sometimes life doesn't make any sense. I grabbed my backpack, opened my window, and with ease, that said more about my sinful nature than the step loser's boring lectures, I popped out my window screen. I put on my sunglasses and peeked out. It was only 4:30 or so, not dark yet, so I was really glad that our private fence hid me from our totally nosy neighbors. On this side of the house, the only other windows were to my sister's room, and she still should be at cheerleading practice. Hell must truly be freezing over because for once I was sincerely glad my sister's world revolved around what she called the sport of cheer. I dropped my backpack out first and then slowly followed it out the window, being careful not to make even a small oof noise when I landed on the grass. I paused there for way too many minutes, burying my face in my arms and to muffle my horrible cough. Then I bent over and lifted up the edge of the pot that held the lavender plant Grandma Redbird had given me, and let my fingers find the hard metal of the key where it nestled against the smush grass. The gate didn't even squeak when I cracked it open and inched out like one of the Charlie's Angels. My cute bug was sitting there, where she always sat, right in front of the third door to our 3-car garage. The step loser wouldn't let me park her inside because he said the lawnmower was more important. More important than a vintage VW? How? That didn't even make sense. Geesh, I sounded like a guy. Since when did I care about the vintageness of my bug? I must really be changing. I looked both ways. Nothing. I sprinted for my bug, jumped in it, put it in neutral, and was truly thankful that our driveway was ridiculously steep when my wonderful car rode smoothly and silently into the street. From there, it was an easy start and zipped out of the neighborhood of big, expensive houses. I didn't even glance in the rearview mirror. I did reach over and turn my cell phone off. I didn't want to talk to anyone. No, that wasn't exactly true. There was one person I really wanted to talk to. She was the one person in the world who I was positive wouldn't look at my mark and think I was a monster or a freak or a really awful person. Like my bug could really read my mind. It seemed to turn off. Blah, blah. It seemed to turn all by itself onto the highway that led to the Muskogee Turnpike and eventually to the most wonderful place in the world, my grandma Redbird's lavender farm. Unlike the drive from school to house, the hour and a half trip to Grandma Redbird's farm seemed to take forever. By the time I pulled off the 2-lane highway onto the hard packed dirt road that led to Grandma's place, my body ached, even worse than it did at this time. They hired that crazy new gym teacher who thought we should do insane weight circuits while she cracked her whip at us and cackled. Okay, so maybe she didn't have a whip, but still, my muscles hurt like hell. It was almost 6 o'clock and the sun was finally starting to set, but my eyes still stung. Actually, even the fading sunlight made my skin feel tingly and weird. It made me glad that it was the end of October and it had finally turned cool enough for me to wear my Borg Invasion 4D hoodie, which thankfully covered most of my skin. Before I got out of the bug, I dug around in the back seat until I found my old OSU trucker's hat and pulled it down on my head so that my face was out of the sun. My grandma's house sat between two lavender fields and was shaded by huge oaks. It was built in 1942 of raw Oklahoma stone with a comfortable porch and unusually big windows. I love this house. Just climbing the little wooden stairs that led to the porch made me feel better. Safe. Then I saw the note taped on the outside of the door. It was easy to recognize Grandma Redbird's pretty handwriting. I'm on the bluffs collecting wildflowers. I touched the soft lavender scented paper. She always knew when I was coming for a visit. When I was a kid, I used to think it was weird. But as I got older, I appreciated the extra scent she had. All my life, I've known that no matter what, I could count on Grandma Redbird. During those awful first months after Mom married John, I think I would have shriveled up and died if I hadn't been able to escape every weekend to Grandma's house. For a second, I considered going inside. Grandma never locks her doors, and waiting for her. But I needed to see her, to have her hug me, and tell me what I had wanted Mom to say. Don't be scared. It'll be okay. We'll make it okay. So instead of going inside, I found the little deer path at the edge of the northernmost lavender field that would lead to the bluffs, and I followed it, letting my fingertips trail over the top of the closest plant so that as I walked, they released their sweet, silvery scent into the air, around me like they were welcoming me home. It felt like years since I'd been here, even though I knew it had only been 4 weeks. John didn't like Grandma. He thought she was sinful. I'd even overheard him tell Mom that Grandma was a witch and going to hell. He's such an ass. Then an amazing thought hit me, and I came to a complete stop. My parents no longer controlled what I did. I wasn't going to live with them ever again. John couldn't tell me what to do anymore. Whoa, how awesome. So awesome that it sent me into a spasm of coughing that made me wrap my arms around myself like I was trying to hold my chest together. I needed to find Grandma Redbird, and I needed to find her now. Chapter 5. The path up the side of the bluffs had always been steep, but I climbed it about a gazillion times with and without my grandma, and I'd never felt like this. It wasn't the coughing anymore, and it wasn't just the sore muscles. I was dizzy, and my stomach had started to gurgle so badly that I was reminding myself of Meg Ryan in the movie French Kiss after she ate all that cheese and had a lactose intolerant fit. Kevin Kline is really cute in that movie, well, for an old guy. And I was snotting. I don't mean just sniffling a little. I mean I was wiping my nose on the sleeve of my hoodie. Gross. I couldn't breathe without opening my mouth, which made me cough more, and I couldn't believe how badly my chest hurt. I tried to remember what it was that officially killed the kids who didn't complete the change into vampires. Did they have heart attacks? Or was it possible that they coughed and snotted themselves to death? Stop thinking about it. I needed to find Grandma Redbird. If Grandma didn't have the answers, she'd figure them out. Grandma Redbird understood people. She said it was because she hadn't lost touch with her Cherokee heritage and the tribal knowledge of the ancestral wise woman she carried in her blood. Even now, it made me smile to think about the frown that came over Grandma's face whenever the subject of the step loser came up. She's the only adult who knows I call him that. Grandma Redbird said it was obvious that the Redbird wise woman blood had skipped over her daughter, but that was only because it had been saving up to give an extra dose of ancient Cherokee magic to me. As a little girl, I climbed this path holding Grandma's hand more times than I can count. In a meadow of tall grasses and wildflowers, we'd lay out on a brightly colored blanket and eat a picnic lunch while Grandma told me stories of the Cherokee people and taught me the mysterious-sounding words of their language. As I struggled up the winding path, those ancient stories seemed to swirl around and around inside my head like smoke from a ceremonial fire, including the sad story of how the stars were formed when a dog was discovering stealing cornmeal and the tribe whipped him. As the dog ran howling to his home in the north, the meal scattered across the sky, and the magic in it made the Milky Way, or how the great buzzard made the mountains and the valleys with his wings, and my favorite, the story about young woman's sun who lived in the east and her brother Moon who lived in the west, and the red bird who was the daughter of the sun. Isn't it weird? I'm a red bird and the daughter of the sun, but I'm turning myself into a monster of the night. I heard myself talking out loud and was surprised that my voice sounded so weak, especially when my words seemed to echo around me, as if I were talking into a vibrating drum. Drum. Thinking the word reminded me of powwows Grandma had taken me to when I was a little girl. And then my thoughts somehow actually breathed life into a memory, and I actually heard the rhythmic beating of ceremonial drums. I looked around, squinting against even the weak light of the dying day. My eyes stunk and my vision was all screwed up. There was no wind, but the shadows of rocks and trees seemed to be moving, stretching, reaching out to me. Grandma, I'm scared, I cried between racking coughs. The spirits of the land are nothing to be frightened of, Zoe Bird. Grandma? Did I hear her voice calling me by my name? Or was it only more weirdness and echoes, this time coming from my memory? Grandma? I called out again, and then stood listening for an answer. Nothing. Nothing except the wind. Unyole, the Cherokee word for wind, drifted through my mind like a half-forgotten dream. Wind? No, wait. There hadn't been any wind just a second ago. But now, I had to hold my hat down with one hand and brush away the hair that was whipping wildly across my face with the other. Then in the wind I heard them, the sounds of many Cherokee voices chanting in time with the beating of the ceremonial drums. Through a veil of hair I saw smoke. The nutty, sweet scent of pinon wood filled my open mouth, and I tasted the campfires of my ancestors. I gasped, fighting to catch my breath. That's when I felt them. They were all around me, almost visible shapes shimmering like the heat waves lifting from my balcony from a blacktop road in summer. I could feel them pressed against me as they twirled and moved with graceful, intricate steps around the shadowy image of a Cherokee campfire. Join us, Uwe Siagia. Join us, daughter. Cherokee ghost, drowning in my own lungs. The fight with my parents, my old life gone. It was all just too much. I ran. I guess what they teach us in biology about adrenaline taking over during the whole fight or flight thing is true, because even though my chest felt like it was going to explode, and it seemed as if I was trying to breathe underwater, I ran up the last and steepest part of the trail like they'd opened up all the stores in the mall and they were giving away free shoes. Gasping for breath, I stumbled up the path, higher and higher, fighting to get away from the frightening spirits that hovered around me like fog. But instead of leaving them behind, it seemed I was running further into their world of smoke and shadows. Why was I dying? Was this always what happens? Was that why I could see ghosts? There's the white light. Where is it? Completely panicked, I rushed forward, throwing my arms out wildly, as if I could hold off the terror that was chasing me. I didn't see the root that broke through the hard ground of the path. Completely disoriented, I tried to catch myself, but all of my reflexes were off. I fell hard. The pain in my head was sharp, but only lasted an instant before blackness swallowed me. Waking up was weird. I expected my body to hurt, especially my head and chest, but instead of pain, I felt fine. Actually, I felt better than fine. I wasn't coughing. My arms and legs were amazingly light, tingly, and warm, like I had just slipped into a bubbly hot tub on a cold night. Huh? Surprise made my eyes open. I was staring up at a light, which miraculously didn't hurt my eyes. Instead of glaring light of the sunlight, this was more like a soft rain of candlelight fluttering down from above. I sat up and realized I was wrong. The light wasn't coming down. I was moving toward it. I'm going to heaven. Well, that'll shock people. I glanced down to see my body, whatever was lying scarily close to the edge of the bluff. My body was very still. My forehead had been cut, and it was bleeding badly. The blood dripped steadily into a gash in the rocky ground, making a trail of red teals that fell into the heart of the bluff. It was incredibly weird to look down on myself. I wasn't scared, but I should be, shouldn't I? Didn't this mean I was dead? Maybe I'd be able to see the Cherokee ghost better now. Even that didn't scare me. Actually, instead of being afraid, it was more like I was an observer, as if none of this could really touch me. I enjoyed the way the world looked, sparkling and new, but it was my body that kept drawing my attention. Floating closer to it, I was breathing in short, shallow pants. Well, my body was breathing like that, not the I that was me. And she didn't look good. She was all pale and her lips were blue. Hey, white face, blue lips, and red blood. Am I patriotic or what? I laughed, and it was amazing. I swear I could see my laughter floating around me like the puffy things you blow off a dandelion, only instead of being white, it was my birthday cake frosting blue. Wow. Who knew hitting my head and passing out would be so much fun? I wondered if this what it was like to be high. The dandelion icing laughter faded, and I could hear the shining crystal sound of running water. I moved closer to my body, able to see that what I had at first thought was a gash in the ground was really a narrow crevasse. The living water sound was coming from deep inside it. Curious, I peered down, and the sparkling silver outline of words drifted up from within the rock. I strained to hear, and was rewarded by a faint whispering of a silver sound. Zoe Redbird, come to me. Grandma, I yelled into the slash in the rock. My words were bright purple, and they filled the air around me. Is that you, Grandma? Come to me. A silver mixed with the purple of a visible voice and turned the words the glistening color of the lavender blossoms. It was an omen, a sign. Somehow, like the spirit guides the Cherokee people have believed in for centuries, Grandma Redbird was telling me I had to go down into that rock. Without any more hesitation, I flung my spirit forward and down into the crevice, following the trail of my blood and the silver memory of my grandma's whisper until I came to a smooth floor of a cave-like room. In the middle of the room was a small stream of water bubbled, giving off tinkling shards of visible sound, bright and glass-colored. Mixed with the scarlet drops of my blood, it lit up the cave with a flickering light that was the color of dried leaves. I wanted to sit next to the bubbling water and let my fingers touch the air around it and play in the texture of its music. But the voice called to me again. Zoe Redbird, follow me to your destiny. So I followed the stream and the woman's call. The cave narrowed until it was a rounded tunnel. It curved and curled around and around into a gentle spiral, ending abruptly at a wall that was covered with carved symbols that looked familiar and mysterious at the same time. Confused, I watched the stream pour down into a crack in the wall and disappear. What now? Was I supposed to follow it? I looked back down the tunnel. Nothing there except dancing light. I turned to the wall and felt a jolt of electric shock. Whoa. There was a woman sitting cross-legged in front of the wall. She was wearing a white French dress that was beaded with the same symbols that were on the wall behind her. She was fantastically beautiful, with long, straight hair, so black it looked as if it had blue and purple highlights like a raven's wing. Her full lips curved up as she spoke, filling the air between us with the silver power of her voice. Tisuliki, uwisi agia. Welcome, daughter, you have done well. She spoke in Cherokee, but even though I hadn't practiced the language much in the last couple of years, I understood the words. You're not my grandma, I blurted, feeling awkward and out of place as my purple words joined with hers, making incredible patterns of sparkling lavender in the air around us. Her smile was like the rising sun. No, daughter, I am not, but I know Sylvia Redbird very well. I took a deep breath. Am I dead? I was afraid she would laugh at me, but she didn't. Instead, her dark eyes were soft and concerned. No, Uisi Agia, you are far from dead, that your spirit has been temporarily freed to wander the realm of Nunai. The spirit people? I glanced around the tunnel, trying to face and forms with the shadows. Your grandmother has taught you well, Yusu Ti Du Swa, little red bird. You are a unique mixture of the old ways and the new world, of ancient tribal blood and the heartbeat of outsiders. Her words made me feel hot and cold at the same time. Who are you? I asked. I am known by many names. Changing Woman, Yeya, Akulujusi, Kianin, Grandmother Spider, and even Dawn. As she spoke each name, her face was transformed so that I was dizzied by her power. She must have understood because she paused and flashed her beautiful smile at me again, and her face settled back into the woman I had first seen. But Zoe Redbird, my daughter, may call me by the name which your world knows me by today. Nyx. Nyx. My voice was barely above a whisper. The vampire goddess? In truth, it was the ancient Greeks touched by the change who first worshipped me as the mother they searched for within their endless night. I have been pleased to call their descendants my children for many ages, and yes, in your world, those children are called vampire. Accept the name Uisiagia. In it you will find your destiny. I could feel my mark burning on my forehead, and all of a sudden I wanted to cry. I don't understand. Find my destiny? I just want to find a way to deal with life, to make all this okay. Goddess, I just want to fit in someplace. I don't think I'm up to finding my destiny. The goddess' face softened again, and when she spoke, her voice was like my mother's, only more as though she had somehow sprinkled the love of every mother in the world into her words. Believe in yourself, Zoe Redbird. I have marked you as my own. You will be my first true Yui Siagia Vani Sinovi, daughter of the night. In this age, you are special. Accept that about yourself, and you will begin to understand there is true power in your uniqueness. Within you is the combined magic of ancient wise women and elders, as well as insight into the understanding of the modern world. The goddess stood up and walked gracefully toward me, her voice painting silver symbols of power in the air around us. When she reached me, she wiped a tear from my cheeks and before taking my face in her hands. Zoe Redbird, daughter of night, I name you my eyes and ears in the world today, a world where good and evil are struggling to find balance. But I'm 16. I can't even parallel park. How am I supposed to know how to be your eyes and ears? She just smiled serenely. You are old beyond your years, Zoe Redbird. Believe in yourself, and you will find a way. But remember, darkness does not always equate to evil, just as light does not always bring good. Then the goddess Nyx, that ancient personification of light, leaned forward and kissed me on my forehead. And for the third time that day, I passed out. Chapter 6. Beautiful see the cloud appear. Beautiful see the rain draw near. The words of the ancient song floated through my head. I must be dreaming about Grandma Redbird again. It made me feel warm and safe and happy, which was especially nice since I'd felt so crappy lately. Except I couldn't remember exactly why. Huh? Odd. Who spoke? The little corn ear, high on top of the stalk. My grandma's song continued. I curled up on my side, sighing as I rubbed my cheek against the soft pillow. Unfortunately, moving my head caused an ugly pain to shoot through my temples, and like a bullet through a pane of glass, it shattered my happy feeling as the memory of the last day overwhelmed me. I was turning into a vampire. I had run away from home. I had an accident and then some kind of weird near-death experience. I was turned into a vampire. Oh my god. Man, my head hurt. Zoe Bird, are you awake, baby? I blinked my blurry eyes to see Grandma Redbird sitting on a little chair beside my bed. Grandma! I croaked and reached for her hand. My voice sounded as terrible as in my head. What happened? Where am I? You're safe, little Redbird. You're safe. My head hurts. I reached up and felt the place on my head that was tight and sore, and my fingers found a prick of stitches. It should. You scared 10 years of my life from me. Grandma rubbed the back of my hand gentle. All that blood. She shuddered and then shook her head and smiled. How about you promise not to do that again? Promise, I said. So you found me. Bloody and unconscious, little bird. Grandma brushed the hair back from my forehead, her fingers lingering lightly on my mark. And so pale that your dark crescent seemed to glow against your skin. I knew you needed to be taken back to the House of Night, which is exactly what I did. She chuckled, and the mischievous sparkle in her eyes made her look like a little girl. I called your mother to tell her that I was returning you to the House of Night, and I had to pretend that my cell phone cut out so I could hang up on her. I'm afraid she's not happy with any of us. I grinned back at Grandma Redbird. Mom was mad at her. But Zoe, whatever were you doing out during the daylight? Why didn't you tell me earlier that you had been marked? I struggled to sit up, grinning in pain. But thankfully it seemed to stop coughing. It must be because I'm finally here at the House of Night. But the thought disappeared as my mind processed all of what Grandma had just said. Wait, I couldn't have told you any earlier. The tracker came to my school today and marked me. I went home first. I really hoped Mom would understand and take my side. I paused, remembering again the awful scene with my parents. In total understanding, Grandma squeezed my hand. She and John basically locked me in my room while they called our shrink and started the prayer tree. Grandma grimaced. So I crawled out my window and I came straight to you. I concluded. I'm glad you did, Zoe Bird, but it just doesn't make any sense. I know. I can't believe I got marked either. Why me? That's not what I meant, baby. I'm not surprised you were tracked and marked. The Redbird blood has always held some strong magic. It was only a matter of time before one of us was chosen. And what I mean is that it makes no sense that you were just marked. The crescent isn't an outline. It's completely filled in. That's impossible. Look for yourself. Ui Siagia. She used the Cherokee word for daughter, suddenly reminding me of my much of a mysterious ancient goddess. Grandma searched through her phone for an antique silver compact she always carried. Without saying anything else, she handed it to me. I pushed the little clasp. It popped up to show me my reflection. The familiar stranger. The me who wasn't quite me. Her eyes were huge and her skin was too pale, but I barely noticed that. It was the mark that I couldn't quit staring at. The mark that was now a completed crescent moon, filled in perfectly with the distinctive sapphire blue of the vampire tattoo. Feeling like I was still moving through a dream, I reached up and let my fingers trace the exotic looking mark, and I seemed to feel my goddess's lips against my skin again. What does it mean? I said, unable to look away from the mark. We were hoping you would have an answer to that, Zoe Bird. Her voice is amazing. Oh, thank you. Her voice was amazing. Even before I looked up from my reflection, I knew she would be unique and incredible. I was right. She was movie star beautiful. I'd never seen anyone up close who was so perfect. She had a huge almond-shaped eyes that were a deep mossy green. Her face was an almost perfect heart, and her skin was that of kind of flawless creaminess that you see on TV. Her hair was a deep red, not that horrid carrot top orange red or the washed out blonde red, but a dark glossy auburn that fell in heavy waves well past her shoulders. Her body was, well, perfect. She was strong and curvy, and she seemed to glow with health and beauty. Plus, she had seriously great boobs. I wish I had great boobs. Huh? Speaking of boobs, I was totally sounding like one. The woman smiled at me and showed amazingly straight white teeth without fangs. Oh, I forgot to mention that in addition to her perfection, she had a sapphire crescent moon neatly tattooed in the middle of her forehead, and from it, swirls of lines that reminded me of ocean waves trimmed her brows. She was a vampire. I said we were hoping you would have some type of explanation about why a fledgling vampire that hasn't changed has the mark of a mature being on her forehead. Without her smile and the gentle concern in her voice, her words would have seemed harsh. Instead, she came off as worried and a little confused. So I'm not a vampire? I blurted. Her music was like laughter. Not yet, Zoe. But I would say that already having your initial mark complete is an excellent omen. Oh, well, good. That's good. Thankfully, Grandma saved me from total humiliation. Zoe, this is the high priest of the House of Night, Nefret. She's been taking good care of you been, while you've been asleep. Welcome to the House of Night, Zoe Redbird, Neferet said warmly. I glanced at Grandma and then back at Neferet. Feeling more than a little lost, I stuttered. That's not really my name. My last name is Montgomery. Is it? Nefret said, raising her amber-tinted brows. One benefit of beginning a new life is that you have the opportunity to start over, to make choices you weren't given before. If you could choose, what would be your true name? I didn't hesitate. Zoe Redbird. And from this moment on, you shall be Zoe Redbird. Welcome to your new life. She reached out like she wanted to shake my hand, and I automatically offered mine. But instead of taking my hand, she grasped my forearm, which was weird but somehow felt right. Her touch was warm and firm. Her smile blazed with welcome. She was amazing and awe-inspiring. Actually, she was what all vampires are. More human, stronger, smarter, more talented. She looked like someone who had turned on a blazing inner light within her, which I realize is definitely an ironic description considering the vampire stereotypes, some of which I already knew were totally true. They avoid sunlight. They're most powerful at night. They need to drink blood to survive. Eesh. And they worship a goddess who I know as night personified. Thank you. It's nice to meet you, I said, trying really hard to sound at least semi-intelligent and normal. As I was telling your grandma earlier, we've never had a fledgling come to us with an unusual manner, unconscious and with a completed mark. Can you remember what happened? I opened my mouth to tell her that I totally remembered it. Falling and hitting my head, seeing myself like I was floating spirit, following the weirdly invisible words into the cave, and finally meeting the goddess Nyx. But right before I said the words, I got a weird feeling. Like something had just hit me in my stomach. It was clear, and it was specific, and it was telling me to shut up. I really don't remember much. I broke off, and my hand found the sore spot where my stitches poked out. At least not after I hit my head. I mean, up until I remember everything. The tracker marked me. I told my parents and got into a ginormic fight with them. Then I ran away to Grandma's place. I was feeling really sick. So when I climbed the path to the bluffs. I remembered the rest. All of the rest. The spirits of the Cherokee people, the dancing, the campfire. Shut up! The feeling screamed at me. I guess I slipped because I was coughing so much and hit my head. The next thing I remember is Grandma Redbird singing, and then I woke up here. I finished in a rush. I wanted to look away from the sharpness of her green-eyed gaze, but the same feeling that was ordering me to be quiet was also clearly telling me that I had to keep eye contact with her, that I had to really, really hard to look like I wasn't hiding anything, even though I didn't really have a clue why I was hiding anything. It's a normal experience, memory loss with a head wound, Grandma said matter-of-factly, breaking the silence. I could have kissed her. Yes, of course it is, Nefert said quickly, her face losing all its sharpness. Do not fear for your granddaughter's health, Sylvia Redbird. All will be well with her. She spoke to Grandma respectfully, and some of the tension that had been building inside me loosened. If she liked Grandma Redbird, she had to be an okay person, or a vampire or whatever. As I'm sure you already know, vampires. Nefert paused and smiled at me. Even fledgling vampires have unusual powers of recovery. Her healing is proceeding so well that it is perfectly safe for her to leave the infirmary. She looked from Grandma to me. Zoe, would you like to meet your new roommate? No. I swallowed hard and nodded. Yes. Excellent, Nefert said. Thankfully, she ignored the fact that I was standing there like a smiling garden gnome. Are you sure you shouldn't keep her here for another day of observation, Grandma asked. I understand your concern, but I assure you, Zoe's physical wounds are already healing at the pace you would find extraordinary. She smiled at me again, and even though I was scared and nervous and just plain freaked out, I smiled back at her. It seemed like she was genuinely happy I was there. And truthfully, she made me think turning into a vampire might not be such a bad thing. Grandma, I'm fine. Really, my head just hurts a little, and the rest of me feels way better. I realized I thought it was true. I completely stopped coughing. My muscles didn't ache anymore. I felt perfectly normal, except for a little headache. The Nefert did something that not only surprised me, but made me instantly like her and begin to trust her. She walked over to Grandma and spoke somberly. Sylvia Redburn, I give you my solemn oath that your granddaughter is safe here. Each fledgling is paired with an adult mentor. To ensure my oath to you, I will be Zoe's mentor. And now, you must entrust her to my care. Nefert placed her fist over her heart and bowed formally, with obvious respect to my grandma. My grandma only hesitated for a moment before answering. I will hold your oath, Nefert, High Priest of Nyx. Then she mimicked Nefert's action by putting her own fist over her heart and bowing to her before turning to me and hugging me hard. Call me if you need me, Zoe Bird. I love you. I will, Grandma. I love you too. And thank you for bringing me here, I whispered, breathing in her familiar lavender scent and trying not to cry. She kissed me gently on my cheeks, and then with her quick, confident step, she walked out of my room, leaving me alone for the first time in my life with a vampire. Well, Zoe, are you ready to begin your new life? I looked up at her and thought again how amazing she was. If I actually changed into a vampire, would I have her confidence and power? Or was that something only a high priestess got? For an instant, it flashed through my mind how awesome it would be to be a high priestess. And then my sanity returned. I was just a kid. A confused kid is that. And definitely not high priest material. I just wanted to figure out how to fit in here, but Nefert had certainly made what was happening to me seem easier to bear. Yes, I am. I was glad I sounded more confident than I felt. Chapter 7. Now, you guys, I'm about to stop at chapter 7. And, I mean, I'll pick it up at the next video, which I'll probably either make tomorrow or I'm honestly not sure. But I'm going to pick it up soon. Okay? Promise. I love you guys. Spreading positive energy. I love this story so far. Bringing back a bunch of memories of when I was in school and had to hear this. But thank you guys for watching. Give me a like. Give me a follow. Whatever you feel like. Or just watching. Listen. Love you.